Across the Park podcast is proud to be sponsored by Globe Gas and Heating. For the best kitchen and bathroom renovations, boiler servicing and repair, and central and underfloor heating in the Northwest, head over to globecentralheating.com and quote Across the Park for a free quote. Hello, welcome to Across the Park podcast, episode 9 of season 24-25. My name is Ian Mills. We are in the amazing Pod Cafe studios in the Baltic Quarter. Big thank you to those guys for making us look as good as our show can. Big thank you to our sponsors there, Globe Gas and Heating. It's the time of the year where it's getting cold. If you're the blue and you want mate rates, get on that guy Lee at Globe Gas and Heating. Such a great guy and a great sponsor. So thank you to those guys, and a big hello to our friends over at Alfie's Squad as well. Not the greatest week to cover Everton, so I'm really glad I've been able to tag my friends in, someone to come in and take the load off my shoulders and talk a lot of sense, as he always does. It's his hat-trick appearance on the show. I'm going to give you the option of a football or a soccerette. Please pick the football. It's my friend, the Everton correspondent from Liverpool Echo, Joe Thomas. Joe, thanks for joining us, and how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, cheers. Not too bad. Have been better for reasons I think we'll get on to.
Yes, I think we all have. And I think the first place to start is the defeat at Southampton on Saturday. I was on the show last week, and I was of the opinion that Southampton are one of those teams who I think will go down, and on that basis, don't give them any hope. Go and win. Fine margins, but the result remains that Everton got beat down at Southampton 1-0. We're 48 hours removed from that. You've had the weekend to think on it. How are you feeling now, 48 hours removed?
I think still very frustrated and a bit disappointed. I think that there is a narrative that can be told, and indeed Sean Dyche told it after the game, whereby you could say that Everton were unfortunate. They created some very good chances. They did enough to potentially win that game. But I think that probably the real story is the fact that they didn't do enough. And the fact that they didn't do enough to turn a could have won into a should have won or a did win. And I think that's a huge missed opportunity, not just in terms of just who the opponent were, but also in terms of where it leaves Everton, quickly approaching a very difficult run of games, and also what it does to Southampton, who are a team that you would like to be able to ignore beneath Everton in the league table. It may well be that is the case, but right now they have a burst of confidence, and Everton have been masters of their own downfall in providing that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think the fact that what it could do to the group at Finch Farm, what it can do to the supporters. But the flip side is what it can do to Everton's rivals, not only of Southampton beating Everton. The rivals of Southampton, and arguably rivals of Everton, have watched that game, and Everton coming to town are now a team that teams can beat. I think that it was such an important result on Saturday, and I really hope we'll move on to West Ham. I really hope that there's not a hangover from it. I really hope we can bounce. But the fear for me is that there may be a hangover now, and other teams will look at Everton and set up arguably different than they would have.
I think one of the concerns is that perhaps Southampton was a hangover from Fulham. So when we're talking about hangovers going into West Ham, we've already got a week where I think there's probably an argument to be made that some lessons that were pretty obvious weren't taken against Fulham. Yeah. Said this in my coverage following the Fulham game that Everton were taught a lesson in that match, and okay, it was brilliant to see the resilience that led to Everton going to the end and getting an equaliser. Brilliant to have that moment for Beto. Great that Everton avoided defeat and managed to stretch their unbeaten run to 5 games as it were. But I think that there's a degree of naivety. I think if anybody thought that Everton were perfect over that 5 games, and I think that some of the problems that led to defeat, or the failure to win in particular at Southampton, were probably warning signs to them at Fulham, and perhaps the failure to address them kind of impacted what happened at the weekend, but also obviously makes you concerned about whether they'll be addressed for West Ham as well, which is clearly a big game.
I think addressing concerns will now become a big talking point on how fans will view the manager. I do want to get into the manager a little bit later, because you're on socials and you've probably seen that there's a lot of reaction almost every game to the manager. So we'll touch upon that. But for me, I think if he's brave, I'll put my neck on the line here. He takes Vitaly Mykolenko out of the side for the next game. I think the kid has struggled. We've seen him get injured at the back end of last season in the derby, a recurring injury in the warm-up games for the Euros for Ukraine. I don't know if that's the cause. He's been at the side already this season with niggles and knocks. I don't think he's performed at the level that he may have done at previous times at Everton. Do you think that's a potential move? Maybe Ashley Young goes left back, where I think he's performed well this season, and the captain comes back in perhaps?
I'm not convinced. I think that we know that Deitch likes consistency. I think Mykolenko struggled in recent games. Ashley Young has done very well on the right. On the right, I do think that there is a conversation that needs to be had about bringing one of your specialist right backs back into the side for a host of different reasons. I think this is probably one of the things that I find a little bit frustrating, is that obviously you mentioned if Deitch is brave there, maybe take Mykolenko out. I actually think that everyone can get improvements without actually having anybody needing to be brave. The big talking point, again, I'm sure it's something we plan to come on to from the weekend, is the decision to leave Jarrad Branthwaite out. And, you talk about Mykolenko struggles there, and I agree that he hasn't reached the levels that he did last season. I think you can look at him individually, but you can also look at the setup around him. And last season, there were two big changes compared to what we're seeing this season. One was he had Jarrad Branthwaite alongside him, and he had Dwight McNeil in front of him. Yeah. And what not having Branthwaite does, and perhaps what not having McNeil on the left does, is it changes the dynamic of that setup, and obviously has a knock-on effect with other players as well. In James Tarkowski being another one.
Of course,
and I think that when you see some of the most obvious issues in that team that we've seen this season, another one being the struggle of which they've had to defend balls into their box from set pieces, I think Jarrad Branthwaite improves them in most of those areas, or gives them an opportunity to improve that is there. And I think that, whilst Tarkowski and Keane deserve credit for some of the job that they've done this season, Keane's redemption arc has been, magnificent. Like, it's been great to watch, but that doesn't mean to say that you can't strive for better. And let's be honest, if Deitch brought Branthwaite into the team and it backfired, whilst I'm sure there'll be some critics, I don't think many people will be saying to him, "I can't believe you brought Jarrad Branthwaite back into the team. What were you doing?" So therefore, I think there are some things. I think there are some easy wins there that don't require bravery, but could perhaps solve obvious problems. And it's a little bit of a frustration that those easy wins aren't being done first before you then look at perhaps what some of the more complicated issues might be.
I think easy wins is probably the right way, really. I think to bring a Jarrad Branthwaite back in and possibly put a Dwight McNeil over on the left, I would be happy with that. I think it would make Vitaly Mykolenko maybe a bit more secure in where he is on the pitch and his positioning, because his positioning on Saturday for the goal was he didn't know where to be. He didn't know where his position was in the counter-attack. And I don't know if that's because Ilman and Dye had been substituted and it was an in-game sort of. I don't know, but I do agree that there are probably easier ways than just dropping somebody. However, you brought it up there, the Michael Keane, Jarrad Branthwaite conundrum. My personal belief is you always play your best player. I had Melanie Harvey on the show a few weeks back, and she said that in the mid-80s when Alan Harper and Kevin Richardson came in for a Kevin Sheedy or a Paul Bracewell, when Paul Bracewell and Kevin Sheedy were fit, they came back in because they were the best players, and she likened the situation to that, and I couldn't really agree more. Do you think now the time is coming? Michael Keane did not make a mistake on Saturday. He was not responsible for the goal. He arguably could have put us 1-0 up. We're at the time now where Jarrad Branthwaite does come back in. I
think now's the time that Jarrad Branthwaite comes back in. I think there's probably an argument to say who he comes in for. Like you just say, Michael Keane's played well in recent weeks. I think James Tarkowski has struggled for parts of this season. What I don't know is necessarily why. Part of that might be injuries. He has been playing through injuries, certainly the first kind of month of the campaign. Maybe there's still some lingering effects from that. But also, I think, like I've just given the credit to Mykolenko, that the dynamic around him has an impact on his performances. Clearly, I think that the balance of the Tarkowski and Keane relationship isn't quite right. Obviously, we saw Branthwaite and Tarkowski work so well last season. I think it probably has to be Branthwaite and one of the other. I think that when Keane is there instead of Branthwaite, I think Tarkowski feels a need to perhaps be a little bit more aggressive. He's the one that comes out a lot more. which is what Branthwaite tends to do when he's in the side. Obviously, the benefit of that is that Branthwaite has the athleticism and the speed to be able to recover if he loses that first ball. James Tarkowski doesn't. That's no slight on him. Jarrad Branthwaite is one of Europe's most promising defensive talents. But I think you can see the dynamic in his game change slightly by not having Jarrad Branthwaite alongside him. I think that as well as the injury, some of his decision making hasn't been great in recent weeks.
Agree, yeah.
He gave away a needless penalty against Newcastle. He pulled down Sandro Tonali. I thought it was a really bad tackle on Cameron Archer in this game. I don't think it was a red card, but it was a poor challenge. There've been a couple of others in recent games. There was the one on Mateta against Palace on the edge of the box. He got the ball, didn't give away a foul, but the margins were very fine again there. Now, is he being more aggressive because he feels the need to, because he's got Keane alongside him rather than Branthwaite? Is it because he's not quite 100% fit? I don't know. But I think the conversation is, you bring Jarrad Branthwaite in, and then the conversation is, who does he come in for? I think that's it. Everton aren't good enough to be able to not play their best players, and this is a player that Everton made a great play of making the statement of turning down. I won't say big money, because I don't think Manchester United's offers were close enough to what he's worth, but they made such a point of keeping him in the summer that to then have him back. And Deitch told me after Ipswich that he was fit for then. That was a fortnight ago. It was 3 games ago. It's not having him in the side just seems strange. Obviously, you mentioned Everton teams of yesteryear. Just look across the park. If Joe Gomez had a good game for Liverpool at the weekend, say Virgil van Dijk's out for a little bit, just say, for instance, Gomez goes in and has 2 good games, minute Van Dijk's back, do you think he stays on the bench? I think he comes straight back in. I think you see that replicated across most sides in the division, because there's a recognition that really you want the best opportunity to win and pick up points, and to do that you need your best players on the pitch. So I don't think it does any disservice to Tarkowski or Keane to say one of you's got to make way for Jarrad Branthwaite. I think both of them have had good moments this season and deserve credit for it. Both, because Keane has done this as well, fought through injury to do a good job. They played a good role in Everton going 5 games unbeaten. And I think Everton lost against Southampton because of their failures in front of goal, not in front of their own goal. But I still think you need to be striving for improvement. I think there is improvement that is needed in this Everton side. And I actually think, for once, because it hasn't been the case very often over the last few years, the answers actually do lie in that squad. Take advantage of them.
No, I agree. I couldn't agree with anything more. The Van Dijk comparison is I've never thought of it that way, but it's very, very, very spot on. Look, for me, the time is right now for Branthwaite to come back in. For me, the time was right at Ipswich, even though Michael Keane scored the goal at Ipswich and the away fans serenaded him, and it's a nice moment for everyone involved. For me, the Tarkowski and Branthwaite partnership gelled so well last year for us to be in a season where, let's make no bones about it, Everton need to just stay up this season and be safe. For that to be the goal, Tarkowski and Jarrad Branthwaite is the pair for me, with a keeper who's more confident, and then the right back, arguably, I would switch Mykolenko again if we can keep him in and make him feel and look a lot better. Okay. The point I'm trying to get to is what I've veered around is we've both sort of agreed that changes possibly need to be made to how Everton's set up.
Yep.
Will this manager do it? Because I don't really see him veering away from, and again, rightly or wrongly, I think he has his people who he trusts. I think Dwight McNeil, what I've heard, and you may know more, didn't train an awful lot last week. If that was somebody else than Dwight McNeil, possibly wouldn't have made the starting lineup, but the manager trusts Dwight McNeil, so he comes in. He is now preferring Michael Keane to Jarrad Branthwaite. There's been other occasions where we've seen like-for-like changes, or an emergency Michael Keane goes up front, but because of the like-for-like changes have limited us. Do you think he will make changes?
Well, I think in fairness to him, he made changes for Southampton. Now, Oral Mangala for Abdoulaye Doucouré was enforced because Doucouré was injured. Albeit Doucouré did do some training in the week and then didn't make the squad, whereas McNeil didn't do any in start.
Exactly.
But he played Jesper Lindstrom on the right, didn't he? And I think that, to some extent, I think that was an attempt to be a little bit more ambitious. I think he probably was a decision that was born in the impact that Lindstrom had against Southampton in the Carabao Cup, when, whilst again that wasn't the most exciting of performances and Everton conceded a lot of possession and obviously went on to lose penalties, really they had the chances to wrap that game up, didn't they? Lindstrom, they played a high back line. Lindstrom repeatedly exploited it, and he had 2 one-on-ones and missed them. And okay, the end product wasn't there, but the chances were created. So he is a manager that is willing to make some changes. What you don't tend to see is lots of them, and certainly lots of them all at once. I'm really interested by what he does at the weekend in relation to the centre-back partnership, just because, after the game, I asked him what was his thought process in leaving Branthwaite out, and his thought process was, well, Everton are 5 unbeaten, and Michael Keane and James Tarkowski have been playing well. So it's form, not fitness. And he went on to say, and I thought they played well again today. So, I mean, if you were to go on what he said there, if he was to remain consistent to what he said in public, and he doesn't always do that, like, I do think you have to take with a degree of what he says in his press conferences. And this is one of the things that makes my job quite hard. But what he says to us, I think, isn't always what he's necessarily thinking. I think he likes to try and protect the information, the thought process inside Finch Farm as much as he possibly can. And that may well be fair enough. But on the logic of what he said, it may well be that Keane and Tarkowski start again at West Ham. I do think now is the time for Branthwaite. I agree with you. I think it's a decision that's probably a couple of weeks late already. But in kind of answer to the question I know you're really asking me is, do I think he's going to make big changes? And probably not. I'd really like to see Iliman die in the number 10. Like that's one for me in that, and I think that a lot of the information that was given to Sean Dyche going into the season was that Iliman Ndiaye is a number 10. And I think he takes a degree of pride from the belief that he has proved that Iliman Ndiaye can actually play out wide, which he's a talented player and he's had some good moments out wide. And Dwight McNeil has had some of the best moments of Everton's season in the middle. I'd swap them round. I mean, I think you have the McNeil-Mikalenko dynamic, which makes Everton stronger down the left defensively. 2, I think that whilst McNeil has had some wonderful standout moments, some wonderful flashes, I don't really think that he's ready for that central role yet. I think that he struggles with his back to goal, struggles to hold up possession, loses the ball a lot. It contributes to Dominic Calvert-Lewin being isolated, and it contributes to Everton being able to get up the pitch in a sustained manner. There are very few people in the league that you would want more than McNeil to be dropping onto, to be running onto a bouncing ball 25 yards out in the middle on his left foot, of course. But there are other facets of his game which are very strong, and I don't think Everton are utilising them to their best when he's out there. Everton's best chance from open play at the weekend was Jack Harrison's, and it came from Dwight McNeil having been moved over to the left late on in the game, putting an absolutely gorgeous ball across, inch perfect from deep to Jack Harrison. Unfortunately, Jack Harrison didn't apply to finish. Well, one of the many issues of Everton over recent weeks is the service to Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Well, you can imagine he's just come off the pitch. You can imagine him sitting on there thinking, I wouldn't have minded a few balls like that. Whether or not he finishes them, is a different thing. But so I also think that the problem is that Iliman Ndiaye is probably Everton's best attacking player. And if you put him on the left, we saw Kenny Tete do it for Fulham. When he's only got half the pitch, it's easy to trap him against the sidelines and nullify him a little bit. And Southampton kind of replicated the Fulham blueprint for that quite well at the weekend, albeit helped by a pretty hard tackle on him by Kyle Walker-Peters in the first few minutes. I think he had a bit of a dead leg after that, and I could see why it was.
Was that the reason the manager said he was substituted?
Well, I think so. Yeah, the manager said he was substituted because he was carrying a little bit of an injury, and I think it was probably from that. It was you could see it on the pitch. It felt like we'll let him know that we're here kind of tackle. And in fairness, just before he went off, he gave the ball away, that led to a decent opportunity for Southampton. So I not necessarily saying that bringing him off was the wrong decision the other day, but I do think that it would be interesting to see what he's like in the middle of the pitch.
No, I couldn't agree more.
Again, that's another one of the, we started this podcast talking about, does he need to be brave to get more out of this team? And I actually think that's why it's so frustrating. I don't think he needs to be brave. He turns up at West Ham, and I mean, West Ham might be a bad game to do it, although they're in terrible form. They're a good side, but if he turns up at Southampton, he puts Jarrad Branthwaite centre back, and he puts McNeil back on the left and Ndiaye in the middle. I don't think anyone has a go if it backfires, but they could be so much better.
It's a really good point, and we've sort of naturally came on to the manager, and I did want to talk about him, albeit we've just spoke about him already. For me, and again, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I do think, especially online, he's becoming a polarising figure. I feel when Evertonians debate him, especially on Twitter, it's back and forth. There's sort of very, very little grounds. I think there's a section of the fan base now who will say he's the restrictions he manages in are hindering him. Fine. He's got the crappy end of the stick. Again, fine. In a term, he came in turmoil in January 23, and then the 23-24 season seen points deductions. Everton is still a Premier League outfit on his watch. Then you get the other side. There's 5 wins in 31. There was almost, I think it was 3 months without a league win last season.
4, wasn't it?
4 months. Yeah. The limitations in our attacking play. I do feel he's becoming a diverse figure. You're on X. You have a look at it as well. Are you feeling the same? Are you feeling like Everton just sort of one way or the other with the manager now?
I think Everton's on. I think there is a vocal, there's a vocal section of the fan base online, which is very much of the opinion that his time should be over or close to being over as Everton manager. I think there's an even bigger kind of amount of frustration with tactics and what Everton fans are watching it at the moment. I think he is a polarising figure amongst the fan base, and I don't think that the last fortnight we've necessarily seen anything new, because I think we saw it during parts of last season as well. I think it's probably a little bit stepped up this season because, one, if you had the points that they got deducted last season, they finished mid-table last year. So there's a temptation to see that that's the basis from which they're starting this season. I actually think that would perhaps, I think starting the season with the mindset that Everton are a team that by rights finished 12th and should be looking to go higher, I think unfortunately probably is a bit too much. They would have been level on points with Brighton, who spent £200 million in the summer. Everton didn't spend anywhere near that money. Some of the teams that finished beneath them underperformed last year. Some of them beneath them spent lots of money last year. I think Everton have got a better squad than they did last year, or the potential to put a better first 11 out than they did last year. But I also think that other teams spent more and are finding it easier to improve as a result. So it's a tough one, but clearly, whilst results and performances aren't the best, he's always going to get a degree of criticism. I think any criticism has to be set against the context in which he's operating and the context in which Everton as a football club are right now. You have to have a look at the wider picture as well in terms of when you think about where the club might go or where you want them to go right at this minute.
I think it's fair to say no decision on that will be made until the ownership is resolved. I think Everton have got an interim board. Now, whether or not they've got the authority to do it or not, I think it would be silly for them to make a change without perhaps even consulting the Friedkin Group. I'm going to ask you for your journalistic intel here and maybe give us a little bit of a spoiler. Are we close to a decision with that? Because we hear that it might not have been as complex as what the 777 groups sort of, the looking into them with the Premier League approval was always going to be tricky. We've told that the Friedkin Group's not going to be that length of time. It's been maybe a couple of months now already. Do you think we're close to an answer either way?
Quite possibly. I don't know. I don't have insight into where they are right now, if I'm being completely honest with you. But everything that we know would suggest that this should be a far more straightforward process than 777. And I think the expectation was at the time, and has been for some time, that this may well be a deal that gets over the line before this year finishes. I don't know of anything to suggest that time frame should be lengthened or extended. So I do think that, barring anything mad going on behind the scenes, and I think we always have to be aware that there's a potential for that with Everton, because look at the last few years that we've lived through. Can't count our chickens, because how many times we've been disappointed out the blue already. But at the minute, there's nothing to suggest there's been any problems. So it feels like a matter of when rather than if.
And if they come in December, it will be in the middle of what looks to be a really, really tough run of fixtures for the football team. The very little matter of a Merseyside derby, the last one at Goodison Park will host, I think will bring added pressure to the 11 that Everton put out there. You go to Manchester City, you've got Arsenal, you've got Chelsea. I think Wolves, because of what Everton's result on Saturday, Wolves will come and try and get something. That run of fixtures coming up is scary for me. Does it make West Ham away? Because again, we've got another international break after West Ham. I don't know how many times these squads have to get together. Is it making West Ham look a bit more important now?
It's making it interesting. I mean, you kind of cut short that run because you've also got before Wolves, Manchester United, and that'll be, Manchester United dysfunctionally can be got at, but Sean Dyche has struggled to do that at Old Trafford as Everton boss, and it'll be Ruben Amorim's first home league game in charge. And on the other side, I mean, obviously this is still 6 weeks away, so anything could happen, but longer than 6 weeks away. But it's an informed Forest side that follow Man City, and then it's away to Bournemouth. You've just back-to-back beaten Arsenal and Man City, haven't you? So I mean, look at this. There's no doubt that it's daunting. I do think that this is a really interesting period coming up and a really pivotal one. Look, there's no appetite at Everton to sack Sean Dyche. You mentioned it already, that it's very much a case of Everton want to try and just get through this season with as little drama as possible, and then naturally a lot of things will change in the summer. But that doesn't mean to say that Dyche has a blank check either. And I think that some of these games coming up are certainly quite symbolic. Obviously, West Ham away. Everton won their last season. It's going to be a difficult one, but they're on, Lopetegui's under huge pressure. I don't think it's a must-win for Sean Dyche, but it'll be another game which, if Everton come away with defeat, will leave a little bit of a. This is the danger of not taking advantage at Southampton. Like, I think that you can say the Premier League's a very difficult league. You can say everybody's there on merit. You can say that Everton were very close to a very different result at Southampton, but ultimately 8 teams out of 9 have played Southampton in the league this season and found a way to beat them. And the only one that didn't were Ipswich, and they still got a point. Everton the first to fail to do that. Now, some of it might have been only a matter of time, and some of it might have been bad luck and hair's breadth decisions, but that's part of the frustration with me. We're not really just going down there and really trying to assert yourself on and go, you know what, like, if maybe Everton need 35 points to stay up this season, and that's the bare minimum, right? It's a objective. Maybe they need 35 points, so maybe you only need to win 8 games a season. They've already done 2. That's you look at it and you go, that could be the third, and then you take yourself. And if you do that, or even if you come away with a point, it just reduces the pressure on West Ham going into an international break. Because imagine if we're sat here in a week or with a fortnight staring ahead of us off the back of that, and you're looking at it's another team that are in a mess, that have got a shot of confidence off the back of Everton. Because then it makes that little period. Manchester United will be a difficult game, but either side of Manchester United, you've got Brentford and Wolves at home. Those feel like they've got the potential to be 2 big games. And there might be 2 games where and you have to give Dyche the credit for he's got the results when he's needed them. Whatever anybody wants to say and think, whatever their opinion of Dyche is, he's kept a club that's been in an absolute mess with a dysfunction at the top, dysfunction in the squad because of the Frankenstein patched up nature of the way it's been put together. Then you throw in things like points deductions as well. He's done a remarkable job to keep Everton up the last 2 seasons. And he's done it by getting the results where he's needed. Well, it feels like Wolves and Brentford will be 2 games where he could really do with just, if he picked up 4 or 6 points in those games, it should take the pressure off then going into that run of fixtures, which is interesting because, Everton have only won 2 games out of 10 this season, and you'd say, they've played Villa and Spurs will be fighting for probably the last Champions League place, and a Brighton side that have spent a lot of money and are a very good side, aren't they? Well, off the back of that, December looks terrifying. But then you also kind of think that maybe some of that might play into Dyche's hands a little bit, because a lot of the things I think it's understandably he's been criticised for now about style of approach and the way he plays become a lot more acceptable when you're playing against Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City. I think we can all understand that those are clubs and teams that are in just healthier positions than Everton at the minute. He beat Liverpool and Chelsea at Goodison last season, so maybe it's almost easier for him to have some of those games. But if he doesn't get those big results, then it will be an interesting one. But he could really do, as I say, with reducing the pressure of some of the games beforehand and just giving himself that wriggle room. And it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out, but I can understand why people are concerned at the moment.
Yeah, look for me, the West Ham one is it's a do not lose.
Yeah,
I think I'd put it at that level of importance that I don't think anyone would be delighted with a 0-0 or a 1-1, or albeit, you know, a late equaliser and a 1-1 with the away and goes home. Boy, it is always a great day, but I don't think we can afford to lose on Saturday going into, and it's another international break.
Yeah, it's brutal, these international breaks.
How many are there?
I know.
How many times do these squads need to get together? And the England manager is an interim manager anyway. You'd think he'd want a break. But anyway, he's a friend of the show, Lee Carsley. He was on the show many years ago doing the audio podcast. But I've got some social media questions for you, Joe, if you don't mind hammering a few. Kenny's talking about Nathan Patterson. He said that he would like to see Nathan Patterson come in, and he thinks that could be a very threatening right-hand side if Jesper Lindstrom stays in as well. And he also says he thinks Beto deserves to start because Beto has made a difference in the last 2 games. Joe's thoughts on both?
Yeah, I'd like to see Nathan Patterson be given a go at some point. Whether or not this is the right time, maybe not. But I do think that, I think Everton need to try and figure out where they are with their right backs at the moment. I think there is room for him. Ashley Young's been very good in recent games, but I'd like to see, Nathan Patterson is someone who's had a difficult Everton career so far. I don't think it's been as bad as it perhaps looks from the outside. He's just been really unfortunate with injuries. There have been times, particularly the start of the season that they started with Frank Lampard, where he's had a run in the team and actually looked quite good.
He did, yeah.
And then it's been his body that's effectively let him down. But Everton have got so much work to do this summer, whoever's in charge, whatever the budget is, whoever the owners are. There are so many contracts that are running out that it would be useful to know whether or not right back is something that they need to look for or not. Is it another problem that they've got to solve? Or actually, if you're given Nathan Patterson a chance, he's come and actually shown that he can be the heir to the Seamus Coleman throne. I'd like to see him be given a chance, been fit for a while now. And yeah, I think that maybe not. I can understand a reluctance to play in behind Lindstrom because then you have 2 very kind of attack-minded players on the right. But if Deitch was to start Harrison, who's obviously someone who does a lot of the defensive work as well, then I think that someone like him and Nathan Patterson could potentially work, especially as, not only will Nathan Patterson have the protection offered by Jack Harrison in front of him, but it's what Jack Harrison could earn from having Nathan Patterson bombing on past him. All of a sudden, every time he gets the ball in the 30 yards from goal out on the right, he hasn't got 2 players on him, he's got 1 because Patterson's overlapped and taken the attention of the fullback, and then it's the odds are better in his favour to then produce an end product that helps Everton, going forward. So I'd like to see Nathan Patterson get a go at some point. I really would. With Beto, I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin is Everton's best striker, and I think that I think the way in which I think his role for the wider team is really important. I don't think he's had the best service recently, but I also think, in fairness to those around him, and I think Deitch may well say this as well. He has had chances. He had a couple of big chances at Ipswich, big chance against Newcastle. At some point he also has to take them. Beto makes things happen. I don't think he's as good a player, but I think that he certainly makes things happen. I think defenders find it difficult to deal with him. I thought he was very good in the half hour that he came on. On Saturday, he won free kicks in dangerous areas. He helped them to create chances. Obviously, he hit the bar. The way he took the goal that was disallowed. I didn't realise. I've got to be honest. I didn't think he had that in him.
Oh, same.
Like that first touch, that control,
and
really
then just
good. Like the composure to slot it past Ramsdale. Yeah, I saw something there that I didn't think Beto had in his locker. Yeah. So I again, like whilst I think that Calvert-Lewin is Everton's best striker, and I think that's probably the case going forward. Although I do think it'll be very interesting to see what happens when Broja gets fit.
How far away are we from that?
Yeah, still a while, because I think that Deitch will want to play him in some under 21s or behind closed doors games first, especially because he's been a while out. But we're certainly looking towards him perhaps getting integrated towards the first team in the next few weeks, I think, and then building on that. And then it'll be the question is, how fit does he need to get for Deitch to view him as fit, and how does he get there, and how long does that take? But I think that could be a really interesting one, particularly as Broja has the chance to essentially cemented himself as the striker for Everton's future. We all think or we're all desperately hoping that Everton enter a brand new era. It's a new dawn in the summer. Well, Broja's got more of a stake, more of a claim to being the front man that leads Everton into that new future than Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because obviously Calvert-Lewin's out of contract in the summer. Broja, if he auditions well, Everton can make him their player. 30 million's a big number, but it's not so big that if you have a striker that's playing well, that settles in well at Everton and scores goals, you wouldn't be unwilling to pay it, I don't think, especially as the Freakins. One thing they've shown at Roma, obviously with Lukaku and Dybala, is that they are willing to make a high-profile forward-line signing.
Very interesting, the Broja one. Very, very interesting. He's gone under the radar a little bit, hasn't he? Because he's came in injured and we haven't physically seen him. So I do think it's very, very interesting. And again, just a sidebar, if you don't mind, on from Kenny's question, the name you brought up there, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Again, I'm not saying that you've got intel. If you have, give it to us. But this time next year, do you see him as Everton's number 9 or not?
It's a really difficult one to call, isn't it? Look, he hasn't signed new contract and he's been offered one. The door is still open from an Everton perspective. Conversations are still ongoing between his team and Everton as well. I think a lot of it will probably get decided in January.
When he sees what interest is there.
When he sees what interest is there and on what terms. I think there's no doubt that for him to be in a stronger position as possible, there is a way in which his interest in Everton's align, and that is, he'll get better offers the better he's doing, and the better he's doing, the better it is for Everton. But yeah, it's another big call. But obviously, so far, everything's pointing to him not being there. I thought his comments in the club interview before the Fulham game were interesting about him wanting to take the outright lead for Premier League goals for Everton. He needs 13 more to overtake Romelu Lukaku. So I think everything to me points to, and I know this to be the case from Everton, they believe that his value to them will be greater than any offer that they're likely to receive in January. So I think from both sides, as it stands, I think both are expecting him to be there to the end of the season. And then I think whether or not he stays on would probably depend on a couple of things. One would be the level of interest he gets in January and what he sees as his contract comes to an end, but also on the vision that he is sold of what Everton are planning to be in the future. Because I could understand if there was whilst I think obviously he has to take responsibility for missing some of the chances that he has had. I can understand why he'd also have a degree of frustration about the style of play at the moment and how it probably isn't particularly conducive to him scoring goals.
And that's what we've heard as well. We've heard that perhaps the style of football Dominic doesn't feel, and we've heard that as a podcast from people. I'm not saying that's from you. We've heard that from people that Dominic does not feel like he can score as many goals as he's talking in interviews that he wants to break Romelu Lukaku's Premier League record. And I think as a fan, I think Dominic is used for the team. Carlo came in and said, you're going to be the man to score the goals, we're going to put 4 players around you, whereas we're saying we're putting 2 players around you and you're going to benefit them. And not all strikers like that, but I think either way, I think the resolution is near, because if the owners come in and then he has other bets on the table to edge in January, I think we'll probably know a lot more. We had a question from Sophie on Twitter for you, Joe, and she said, I asked this question to Joe on this podcast last year. It's the same question. Is there any more on Dele? I really want to see Dele play for Everton again, although it seems he has a lot of setbacks. Do we need to write this one off? Or inside Finch Farm, is there hope he could play behind closed doors with a view to signing at least a short-term deal?
Yeah, I think that... I think they like him behind closed doors, so they wouldn't have kept him on, albeit on a unofficial basis, because he's not an Everton player at the moment, and he couldn't play as a result because he's not registered with the club. He can't play in under 21s. I think that there is a patience just to see what he can get back to. I think there is an openness to give him a contract if they think that he can make a difference. But so far, unfortunately, injury setbacks have repeatedly prevented Everton from getting a proper look at where he actually is and what he could potentially do. He is someone who's working very hard behind the scenes, and I think he's just someone who believes that he can make a difference. I think he has a decent relationship with Sean Dyche, and like I say, I think there's an acceptance there that he has talent that could hugely benefit Everton if it can be realised again. They just got to be able to get him back to a point where they can watch him. And that hasn't been the case so far. Haven't heard anything of any new setbacks recently. So, he has got close on several occasions. Hopefully it's something they can maybe start looking at before the end of the year.
Do you think that would maybe be an exciting, not so much of a signing, but if Everton go into, I'm not saying he can be fit for December, but hypothetically, if Dele Alli was on the bench for the Merseyside derby and his name got read out and things, I think that could be quite a mood lifter for the fans, perhaps.
Yeah, it could do. It could do. But obviously, I don't think Everton are in a position where they can necessarily afford to make, where they can afford to commit money for symbolic gestures, and things like that. There would have to be a belief that he could play and impact games, and probably part of the conversation for that is whether or not Sean Dyche would be willing to use him in the positions that, because at this present moment in time, it feels like Everton worked really hard and spent a chunk of what money they did have on getting a player who's a highly rated number 10 in during the summer. And at the minute, he's playing on the left wing. So, I mean, there'd have to be some serious conversations there about whether or not Dyche would be willing to, relieve Dwight McNeil of that role and give it to Dele Alli. And I think that probably signing Ndiaye was an acknowledgement that things were probably, there was no expectation on Dele coming in and being able to have a big role. I think anything from Dele is a bonus, but I think we'd all love to see him back. And look, if he has the fitness, then I think his footballing brain is fantastic, isn't it? We'd all love to see a fit and firing Dele in Everton's side, and he would definitely improve it. So,
I think we can all agree on that. And one thing that me and you, Joe, and Sophie can agree on is we don't want that question this time next year. We don't want that question again next year. I think it'd be great to see Dele back in the Everton team. We've got one from Callie. We've got three more, then we'll let you go, Joe. So Callie says, how does Joe feel about being part of the final season at Goodison? There's only 13 left, including a Merseyside derby. Is Joe going to miss it? Is he feeling that already? And just tickle me, this one. We always hear of the supporter and the corporate facilities needing improvement. But is he looking forward to the better media facilities at Bramley-Moore?
Well, firstly, Goodison's an incredibly special place. I do love that stadium, and I will miss it when it's gone. I think it's one of the best stadiums I've ever been to. So I think, I will be sad to see it go. It does feel like an enormous privilege to be part of its final year and to be writing the final match reports and things like that. And knowing that Goodison's time is coming to an end has already kind of added to, in some respects, the pressure, but also the prestige and the privilege of what I've been able to do so far. The Merseyside derby win last year. Yeah. So we hope that they go and replicate that this year. But I mean, things like that feel extra special because, because of the surroundings. In terms of the media facilities, more space. They are, people won't be surprised to see that they echo some of the issues that we have in the stadium. Elsewhere, there's a big pillar that means that I can't see a chunk of the one corner of the pitch. There's seating is difficult. It's very cramped. We're on the old wooden seats, and when there are games that aren't a huge focal point, it's fine. But when, say for instance, you have the Merseyside derby and every seat is full, I can't really work. I got my laptop in front of me. In fact, the last derby, because your elbows are further back if you and everyone else is typing. Last derby, I was doing most of my work on my phone because I could hunch forward and do it like that, as opposed to. So I was writing into Google Docs on my phone rather than just abandon the laptop, because otherwise I just didn't have the space to be able to do it.
So as a journalist, it'll be nice to have a better facility.
Absolutely. We're fortunate the Wi-Fi is a lot better than I think it is for supporters.
What, we have Wi-Fi?
So we at least have that, and the people are brilliant. Like the people that we deal with in the media sections are really lovely people, and I hope and I'm quite confident this will be the case, that Everton will kind of be able to retain that kind of family feel going across from Goodison to, because one of the many things that has made Everton so special for so long is the people that, the people that work there, the people that deal with everyone, and Everton, especially in that respect, I'm sure they'll be able to keep that as they move across to the waterfront.
Two more, Joe. So Gaz, he says that this Gaz on Twitter, he thinks there's lots for the Friedkin group to do. So let's take the question that the Friedkin group are in. They've came in now, it's approved.
Right.
Gaz says, how far top of the list is establishing just what Sean Dyche and Kevin Thelwell's future look like, or because of the financials, is the likes of getting Bramley-Moore over the line and a naming rights? Does that prioritise over the future of Sean Dyche and Kevin Thelwell?
No, I think the football operation is probably the one where there's the greatest need for attention, both for footballing reasons and for economical reasons as well. That most of things, I think most of it's going to be sorted with the stadium. That's not going to be an issue, and I think that a lot of some of the work has been done. A lot of hard work has been done to address some of the long-standing financial issues of the club. More work needs to be done, but obviously having stable owners will benefit. That'll be an improvement. Owners with deep pockets and also a new stadium, which means that they can bring in more money, which they can potentially give some more flexibility in terms of the financial regulations. Is also a massive help. I think the big one for me is the director of football. I think that has to be the priority, because I think the manager then flows from that. You make a decision on your director of football, and then you can have a conversation with the director of football about where you want to go with the manager and where you want to go on the recruitment side. So that's the big question. What happens with Kevin Thelwell? He would like to stay on. Sean Dyche would like to stay on. I think there's probably an element to both whereby they see the fact that they've done a very tough job in very difficult circumstances. Obviously, the reward for the club is going into the shiny new iconic stadium on the waterfront. I think they'd both like to be part of that, and both could potentially make an argument to say that they deserve to be part of that. If Everton obviously get there in the Premier League, but I think that some tough decisions need to be made, and I think it starts with that. I think it starts with working out what you're going to do with the director of football. Are you going to give it to Kevin Thelwell so you have some continuity during what is going to be a period of incredible transition? Do you want someone that's kind of been there for the last few years that can give you some of that knowledge and that history as you try and go forward, or do you completely just wipe the slate clean? I'll be really interested to see what happens on that front.
There's lots to do, isn't there?
There's lots to do, but I mean, next summer I think 13 players are out of contract, so they need to. On the one hand, that could be problematic, but on the other hand, it represents a huge opportunity in so many different ways, and they need to get the big decisions right. And they need to get the big decisions right on the manager, and then who they want to keep, if any, and they want to, be preparing for who they want to get in as early as possible. And I think all of those conversations have to be had with a director of football. So addressing the uncertainty over that, I think, is key. I think that's your first step.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last question, Tommy, is from Tommy. Sorry for you, Joe. Is one directly to you. What's the best story you've had to write about Everton during your time covering them, and also what was the worst story? So, can a few come to mind straight away there? Or?
Well, yeah. I mean, the worst period's undoubtedly that January, that winter of what was it now?
23 was
23, isn't it? Yeah. That was incredibly complex time, and obviously so much was going on. It was a very difficult time, and so much going on behind the scenes as well. People only ever see a fraction of what we're doing and trying to do, and
you had to get that right. You had to, because the line between supporter and board at that point, the trust that both had in you, I guess, you had to get that right.
It was just a very difficult period, and then in terms of happy. I think it would probably be that Merseyside derby last season. The Crystal Palace win was great, and I think it's easy to. I think we don't want to dwell on it too much, and I don't think it should be celebrated too much in the sense that I can understand that. This is a club that should be doing far more than celebrating surviving in the Premier League, but it was a great night. Like it did, especially with the manner in which it happened, being 2-0 down at half time, it felt like everything was lost and they come back. I do think there was some merit in the outpouring of emotion at the end, because I think some of that, not even some, I think a lot of that was achieved. Obviously, we know what happened after, but I think there was something that was worth celebrating in that night, in what felt like the way in which the club had the dressing room had reunited with the stands in the months previously, kind of starting with that Chelsea game, the first of the coach welcomes, taking that into Leicester. Yeah, that was a joint effort, and it felt like everybody was aware that everyone was acknowledged it, and everyone could celebrate with each other, knowing that being the case. But the derby was special, I think, kind of, especially knowing that, I talk about the context of that Palace win, and I think this was a theme of writing about the derby, was that, so many of the good moments in the last few years of Everton and the last few years of Goodison Park have been good, but tinged with the frustration that it's celebrating survival and escaping from situations that a club like Everton shouldn't really be in. So it's like, no matter how much you want to celebrate Crystal Palace or Bournemouth the following season, the ceiling for enjoyment is much lower, because a big part of that is, we shouldn't really be here. Shouldn't really have to be supporting this football club, shouldn't be this exhausting and this difficult. With the derby, it just, having got that big win against Forest the week, a couple of days earlier, it felt like, if that was the game that essentially, it was Brentford a couple of days later that confirmed safety, but the Forest one was huge. The Liverpool one still took place against the backdrop of a relegation battle, but it felt like a moment that was genuinely worthy of proper celebration. Not just because of the opponent, but also because of just how emphatic that victory was. I know Everton didn't have a lot of possession, but they were the better side by a mile. And that was the Liverpool side that came to Goodison Park wanting to and needing to win. And Everton just wiped the floor with them. Idrissa Gueye that night was brilliant. Yeah, just had that incredible week, didn't he?
Unbelievable. He scored again on Saturday, then, didn't he? Yeah.
He scored. Yeah, I think he scored in both sides. Forest and against Brentford, didn't he? So so the fact that it was something that you could enjoy, and there was no caveat to that enjoyment because Everton deserved it.
Were you looking at over any red journalists that night with a bit of a wink because of the damage we'd done?
It was just. It's just, it's amazing the pressure that you feel under in such moments, because you've got the rest of the stadium just going absolutely erupting and living in the moment, and you're there, and it's like, I've probably got 20 minutes to finish off about 1,500 words on one of the most high profile and memorable moments in the final years of Goodison Park, and you want to do it justice, and that can be hard sometimes, but that's also the privilege of the role.
I've got to add on to Tommy's question, if you don't mind, and we'll let you go. Do you ever feel a sense of pressure when you're writing articles? Because I think the first example there, that January period, there's maybe older fans who aren't on social media and they're picking up the Liverpool Echo and they're relying on the story from you. And then you've got people who are trying to enjoy the Merseyside derby and they're looking at the front of the Echo online and your article's the first there. When you're writing these, is there a sense of pressure and I've got to get this right?
I feel that way. Yeah, there's a sense of pressure every single day.
Yeah.
Everton's an incredible football club, and it deserves good reporting. It's up to people to decide whether or not I do that, but I have an awareness that the club that deserves it and a fan base that deserves it. So trying to do that every day is difficult and challenging, but it's part of the privilege of being able to report on just one of the best football clubs in the world. So that pressure is always there, and I think it makes it's a good thing to have that pressure, and it's good that people care, and I like that, and I like that so many people are willing to kind of tell me what they think and be honest, and that's not always nice to read, but I want to be open. I want people to be able to have a conversation with me, and at least I can explain why I think this or that. But obviously it becomes so much more challenging in moments like this, I think, which are quite difficult, whereby I can completely understand why there are big parts of the fan base are unhappy right now with what they're seeing with results. I also think that the wider context is very important of where Everton are as a football club, where they have been over the last few years, some of the decision making that's got them into this position, and how the worst thing to do right now with the light at the end of the tunnel and so close is perhaps to replicate some of the bad things that have led to this trouble in the first place.
Yeah.
Trying to toe that line is difficult. Trying to find the balance there between being critical but fair during times of, as I say, when there's a lot of chatter around that is difficult, and there's a lot of pressure in that. But try my best, and people know where I am if they want to tell me that I'm not doing it right or good enough. So, and they're more than welcome to, because I accept that there'll always be flaws in what I do. So,
no, mate, I've said this since the first time I got you on. I'm a big fan of your work. I think I first noticed you when you came on and someone said, the Echo are going after the club. I said, what? There's a lad called Joe Thomas. He's actually asking questions of the club. Seems a lifetime ago now. But I've been a big fan of your work ever since. But not only are you a great journalist, you're a great podcaster. The Royal Blue podcast. I've been watching that for a while, and I think visually it's getting really, really good. I think we've now got the bar at the bottom, and we've gone from recording in a cafe to a studio, and I think you're rapidly becoming one of the best YouTube and content providers out there. Are you enjoying doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Everton are really fortunate, actually. I think that there's obviously yourself. There's a number of really good platforms for discussion and debate about the club, and I think that's really healthy, and I think that makes the club as a whole stronger.
Thank you so much, Joe, for coming on. I know I case you all the time. I case this lad to come on all the time, and he's so generous with his time. You're a busy man, but Joe, thank you for coming back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Guys, hope you enjoyed as much as I did speaking to Liverpool Echo Everton correspondent, Mr. Joe Thomas. I couldn't get to all your questions. I'm so sorry, but we'll try and get Joe on again, hopefully in much better circumstances in the future after an Everton win. I don't think I've got him on after the win yet, so we need to right that wrong. Anyone who watched the Everton women last night at Goodison Park, Chelsea is such a good side. But again, an experience in getting down to Goodison, seeing loads of young supporters down there enjoying it. That's what it was all about, really, to get behind the women. And we did. It was loud at times. We just came up against a really, really formidable opponent. However, the next time we can get down to help the women is the Merseyside derby on Sunday, the 17th of November. I urge you all to go to EvertonFC.com. It is £2 for children. It's a tenner for kids. I'm taking my two blue boy and girls for 14 quid to get behind the girls at Goodison Park, and I'm going to get a great big picture in the Gladys Street, which will stay with me forever. So I encourage you all to get behind the women. They do need the support. We're having a very, very difficult time. I think the captain, Megan Finnegan, has came out today saying the restraints on the club as a whole do filter into what the women can do transfer-wise as well. So let's do what we're doing for the men. Let's try and get Goodison Park full and support them on the Merseyside derby. But to close this week's show, it has been a disappointing game at Southampton. We're hoping for more this Saturday at West Ham. I'm hoping to get a West Ham here to fan on for the away preview on Friday, and then it's international break where we're all going to have a breather. I think we need it again as Evertonians. Thank you again, Joe, for coming on, and up them toffees.